I'm just going to work through some unit circle trigonometry questions from the Leaving Cert course, which is based on a textbook, Concise Maths 4, page 184. So here we're asked to find the exact value of the given angle in the question. I've numbered them 1 to 10 just for ease of going through them in the video. The main thing is to follow the same strategy we looked at before, which was to start with by finding the quadrant that the angle is in. Then we need to find the reference angle, then the trigonometric ratio using the common triangles, and then we see whether it's positive or negative based on its quadrant, and then we have the final answer when we put that all together. We then use our log tables to find the sine of 60 degrees. Sine 60 is root 3 over 2. Okay, well we go back and we notice that for the unit circle, CAST, we know that all values of sine are positive in quadrant 2. So our answer just becomes root 3 over 2. As we know it's in quadrant 2, we know that it's positive. If it was in quadrant 1, the reference angle, it would also be positive. If it was in quadrant 3, however, there we know that only tan values are positive in quadrant 3, so that would be minus root 3 over 2. And if it was in quadrant 4, we know that only cosine values are positive in quadrant 4, so it would be minus root 3 over 2 here. But we know that our angle is in quadrant 2. So now we'll have a look at the next one, which is tan of 240 degrees. So now we're looking at tan of 240 degrees. First thing we ask ourselves is what quadrant it's in. It's in quadrant number 3 because that's between 180 degrees and 270 degrees. The next thing we do is look at the reference angle. The reference angle in quadrant 3 is found by subtracting our angle from 180 degrees. And here we're left with 60 degrees. So now we're looking at finding the tan of 60 degrees. Well, tan 60 is just equal to root 3. So our answer there just becomes root 3. Well, we go back then and find 240 degrees is in quadrant number 3. All values of tan are positive in quadrant 3, so therefore the answer is just root 3. Remember, if it was in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4, values of tan are negative in quadrant 2 and 4, so it would be a negative. And next question is cos of minus 120 degrees. A little bit of extra work here. There are a number of ways to do this, but one thing we could do is just add 360 degrees, because we know that in the unit circle it repeats itself every 360 degrees, so the cos of minus 120 degrees is equal to minus 120 plus 360 degrees, which is 240 degrees. So we're dealing with quadrant 3 here again. Okay. Our reference angle therefore in quadrant 3 is found by taking our angle 240, subtracting 180, which is 60 degrees, the same as the last question. Now we're looking up cos of 60 degrees. The cos of 60 degrees is 1 over 2. So we just write that in here, 1 over 2. Is it positive or negative? Well, we know that in quadrant number 3 here, only tan angles give a positive value, so therefore cosine has to be negative. So our answer is minus a half for the cos of minus 120 degrees. So the next question we're looking at is sine of minus 4 pi over 3. Find what minus 4 pi over 3 is in terms of pi by just adding 2 pi to that. So minus 4 pi over 3 plus 2 pi, which is 6 pi over 3, gives you 2 pi over 3. What you could then do is realize that if we're going around the unit circle in radians, well, 0 degrees is at the start. This is 90 degrees, which is just pi over 2. This is 180 degrees, which is just pi. And this is 270, which is 3 pi over 2. To find our quadrant then, we would just realize that 2 pi over 3 is 2/3 of pi, which is between pi over 2 and pi. So therefore our quadrant is quadrant number 2 that we're dealing with. So if we're dealing with quadrant number 2, well, previously to get the reference angle, we just took 180 degrees and subtracted the angle. Now we're just going to take pi and subtract 2/3 pi, which just gives us what 1/3 pi. Okay, or pi over 3. Now we use our trigonometric ratio. We're looking for the sine of pi over 3. It's going to be sine. We go to radians, find pi over 3, which is 60 degrees. So our answer is root 3 over 2. Well, because 2 pi over 3 is in quadrant 2, that's sine values are positive in quadrant 2. So our answer is just root 3 divided by 2. If you wanted to on that question, what you could have done, which might be easier for you, is to go straight and convert sine minus 4 pi over 3 into degrees. Okay, well, to do that, if pi is 180 degrees, minus 4 pi over 3 is just minus 4 times 180 over 3, which is minus 4 times 60, so that's 240 degrees. And you work from the previous question that we used before. So the next question 5 is sine of 330 times cos of 60 degrees. Okay, so we have to go through the work for both and then multiply. So we've got quadrant, so let's deal with sine first. Well, sine of minus 330, we add 360 degrees to that, so that's really just the sine of 30 degrees. So we're dealing with quadrant 1 for part A. Okay, so we're dealing with quadrant 1 there. The reference angle is 30 degrees because it's minus 330 plus 360, which is 30 degrees. Trigonometric ratio for sine of 30 is just a half, so it's 1 over 2. It's in quadrant 2, so our answer there is a half for the first part, A, sine of 330. Cos of 60 degrees is also in quadrant number 1, so it's going to be cos of 60 degrees, which is a half. All values of sine, cos and tan are positive there, so we're dealing with quadrant 1, 30 degrees again, it's going to be a half. All values are positive for both, so our answer there is a half. Then if we're multiplying A by B there, which is sine of minus 330 by cos of 60 degrees, we get a half times a half, which is just 1/4. So the next part deals with question 5, which is cos of 120 times tan of 240. We'll call cos of 120 degrees A, tan of 240 degrees B. So dealing with A first, we know that 120 degrees is in quadrant number 2, so our reference angle becomes 180 minus 120, which is 60. Okay, and we're looking at the cos of 60 degrees, which is a half. Is it positive or negative? Well, in quadrant number 2, cosine is negative, so our answer there is a minus a half. Next part, then we're dealing with the tan of 240. Here, tan of 240, 240 degrees is in quadrant number 3. How to get the reference angle? What is going to be 240 minus 180, which is 60 degrees also. So now we're looking at the tan of 60 degrees, which is root 3. Is it positive or negative? Well, in quadrant number 3, which is what we're dealing with there, tan is positive, so it's just going to be root 3, which is positive. So our overall answer, A times B, is a minus a half times root 3, which is equal to a minus root 3 over 2. Okay, so the next question deals with tan of 4 pi over 3 times tan of 5 pi over 3. First thing I'm going to do actually is just convert them straight to degrees because of the space we're working on here. It's just easier. So tan of 4 pi over 3 is just going to be, well, 4 pi over 3 is 4 times 180 over 3, which is 240 degrees. And tan of 5 pi over 3 next is going to be 5 times 180 divided by 3, which is 300 degrees. Okay, so that's B, and this is A. So, dealing with part A first, we know that 240 degrees is in this quadrant 3, because it's between 180 and 270 degrees. So we're dealing with quadrant 3. The reference angle becomes 240 minus 180, which is just 60 degrees. So we're looking up the tan of 60, which is root 3, which is positive in quadrant 3, so therefore the answer there is just root 3 for part A. So now we're looking at quadrant part B there, which is tan of 5 pi over 3. We already said that tan of 5 pi over 3 is 300 degrees. The 300 degrees is in quadrant number 4. How to find the reference angle in quadrant number 4? Well, the reference angle in quadrant number 4 is just going to be 360 degrees minus 300, which is also 60 degrees. We've already looked up tan of 60 degrees, which is root 3. So this time it's in quadrant number 4 though. Quadrant number 4, tan is negative, so the answer there is minus root 3. So overall our answer is going to be A times B, which is root 3, times minus root 3, which is just minus 3. So the next question is cos of A is equal to minus half. So it could be cos of theta is equal to minus a half. So cos A equals a minus a half. So we're looking for a value of the angle A when the cos of that angle is equal to minus a half. So the first step in this question is to find the reference angle. The reference angle is found by looking up the number half with respect to cos. So here the reference angle is 60 degrees. Okay, so the reference angle is 60 degrees, but we still don't know what quadrant the angle is in. You're told to restrict your answer to between 0 and 180 degrees. Well, if I look up my unit circle, I'm just dealing with quadrant 1 and 2 because that's where the angle A is, between 0 and 180 degrees. But because cos of A is minus a half, we know that cos of any angle between 0 and 90 is positive. So here we're dealing with quadrant 2 because the answer has to be between 0 and 180 degrees. The only values for cos of an angle which are negative in between 0 and 180 degrees are in quadrant 2. So now we just need to find out, well, what is 60 degrees in quadrant 2? Well, to find the actual angle A, we just take 180 degrees and subtract 60, which is 120 degrees. So A must be 120 degrees. Remember, we always check from the x-axis. So if that's 60 degrees and that's 180 degrees, then our angle here is 120 degrees. So the next question is question 9 here. We're told sine of A equals 1 over root 2. So we're going to do the same as the question before. This time we're told to limit our answer between 90 and 180 degrees. So we look up what is 1 over root 2 as a reference angle. So we're dealing with sine. So it's going to be sine. We go across to 1 over root 2 here, and it's 45 degrees. So my reference angle is 45 degrees. Okay, if the reference angle is 45 degrees, so the next thing we do is look at our unit circle. We're told our answer is between 90 degrees and 180 degrees, so it has to be here. So that's quadrant number 2. Well, what is 45 degrees in quadrant number 2? Well, our angle A is equal to 180 degrees minus 45 degrees, which is equal to 135 degrees. So that's the angle A for question 9. Last question deals with tan of A equal to minus 1. Okay, so we find the reference angle, so we're dealing with tan, looking for an answer of 1. So the reference angle is 45 degrees. Now we need to know what quadrant we're dealing with. Well, in the answer it's asked us to keep A has to be between 270 and 360. So we draw a rough sketch of the unit circle. CAST. Our angle has to be between 270 and 360 here. We're not surprised here that the angle is minus 1 because we know that tan values are negative in quadrant 4. which is the one they're asking us to find the answer in. So the next step is, how do we find the actual angle when we know that the reference angle is 45 degrees? Well, the actual angle is going to be 360 degrees minus 45 degrees, which is equal to 315 degrees. So the tan of 315 degrees is minus 1, and we've just worked that out there.